at some point he had to live at the church, and he just hated that whole homeless thing. When you have a comfortable home in KwaZulu, a bed waiting for you, still likely with all of your like posters of cars on the wall. Your grandmother probably didn't bring them down. His mom was late, but I believe they had a farm. Yeah, okay. My ex-boyfriend basically made a spiritual decision inspired by greed and his own. Listen, you know what? I can't even call it a delusion of grandeur, because when you know what you can do, when you know your potential, you will feel like the world is just not cutting you slack and they don't know what you're about. And it'll annoy you how much they keep on slamming doors in your face because you know you're better oftentimes than everybody else that they pretty much are considering. Because on paper, those people look good, but I am really good. You have not seen me. When you know yourself and your potential, it's very frustrating to be rejected, especially in favor of people that are not at your level, but who've got paperwork helping them along. Yeah. So anyway, whatever. That was like that whole thing. So that guy, unlike me, who after enough doors was slammed in my face and finally Liberty Life came through, he never waited for his Liberty Life opportunity. And his Liberty Life opportunity would have inevitably come. Why? Because 2000 and, like I said, late 2006, 7, 8, 9, while it was not yet the digital boom, it was well on its way there. It was well on its way there. Well. And the beautiful thing about the digital boom is that it also brought internet into our houses, as opposed to having to get internet only from local area network in the office. So therefore, people got Wi-Fi in their homes. Yes, that happened around COVID, we get it. Largely fiber to the home, Wi-Fi in people's houses was like already a thing even before COVID slapped. It's just like, oh yes, we got it at the date of COVID because companies just all went digital. They all went online or whatever, but it was entirely possible. It's just that that whole market exploded during COVID of having Wi-Fi in people's houses. But even if you did not have Wi-Fi in a home, one could easily notice and could easily recognize that there was a market that was opening and burgeoning. And even if you don't see it, even if you're not a market researcher, even if you don't get deep dive into actually speculating trends, bottom line is the reason why any market or industry booms is because people take it up. They adopt it. And even in the rural areas, there's electricity and there is internet. It's just that it's rural, but it's not disconnected from the world. There would have been an adoption of technological advancements even in that space. Enough for this guy who had, I guess, the experience of Johannesburg to not only be a market leader in that space where he was at, but of course run with the trends and the times. He was a young man on the come up. And he, like I said, he was partying. He wasn't partying anymore. So I get it, born again, apparently, allegedly. So when I took to the party and whatnot, even though he was quite relatively young when he claims to have been born again, but he would have been amidst enough young people, basically interrogating trends of what the young people are doing, to see that the space that he comes from, the environment that he comes from, there is a market opening up for it in the world at large. And if at all you are any kind of forecaster when it comes to financials, you will speculate that something is going to become massive in the future, and so invest in it now. And so that when it booms, you be out here making bumper profits or whatever. The Lord is the one that awards wisdom, right? God is the one that, if at all, that guy, I get a claim to be in Christ. He was praying. He was, oh God, please help me. Please help me. I want a job. The Lord would have given him forewarning, understanding. So that was ahead of his peers. Because where it is that the things of God are touched, where it is that God touches things too, listen, there is pioneering for knowledge. There is thought leadership. There is innovation and groundbreaking discoveries in God's disciples. Joseph not only interpreted Pharaoh's dream, but was the only one with administrative powers, abilities to actually effect that whole entire agricultural project in Egypt, enough to be the prime minister of Egypt, right? Joseph was given industrial foresight as to the feasibility of this thing and also ideas. The Lord is the one that puts these things in you. So if you claim to be his disciple, when you're suffering, when you're going through a lot, when you're in prison, you are going to be the only person that has a solution for an entire country like Egypt. So this guy, even though, unless you are like super califragilistic, into like probabilities and whatnot, doing stats and forecasting, you're not just going to think that one day there's going to be internet in almost every single household. There's going to be internet definitely at malls that is free. And there's also going to be an ability for you to sit at a restaurant for 2-3 hours, and also just a boom of all things international, getting digital. You might not be able to foresee that unless you're an actuarial scientist or whatever, but you also won't see that unless you're a child of God and you don't have to be an actuary. You know what I mean? The Lord gives foresight. He's the one that awards wisdom. He's the one that awards prophecy about what's coming in the future. Enough for him to say you've been patient. And so because you've been patient, I'm going to tell you what's going to change in the market. In the times of Joseph, I'm going to tell you what's going to change in the environment. You're not a meteorologist, neither a weatherman, but you're a godly man. And I'm going to tell you that there's going to be 7 years of drought and then 7 years of plenty. Now 7 years of plenty, then drought. Plenty, then drought. But I'm also going to give you the solution so that you will be the only person with an answer in an ecosystem that doesn't know how to deal with this drought. God does that when you've been patient. Do not grow weary of doing good, for in due season you will reap the peaceful fruit of righteousness if you don't give up. The Lord will forearm you with insight, knowledge, and understanding that is futuristic, that is going to make you a market leader in your space, that you could not have speculated this thing, but God makes you walk in it. Until by the time it bears fruit for you, you're making bumper profits because you're literally first to market. But you, in the season of bodai, in the season of going absolutely nowhere very slowly like a snail, in that season, everybody was laughing at you, door slamming you. But if you don't turn your heart from the Lord, if you continue to seek his face earnestly every night, if you beseech him, if you allow yourself to say, naked I have come into this world, naked shall I leave, God gave, now God took away. The Lord will not cast you headlong, and you will one day turn a massive profit for simply waiting around in an ecosystem that simply because the weather changed, you made bumper profits. The Lord is the biggest and baddest market analyst in the world, in the universe, at all. And if you latch on to the Prince of Peace and the one who is omniscient, without faltering and wobbly-legged out here fainting apart, you will realize fruit. You will realize bumper produce. And people will be in awe. They'll be gobsmacked. They'll be shocked. They'll be taken aback by the fact that this whole time the thing you were doing was so lucrative. And yet we all shunned it and underestimated what that guy was supposed to do. Instead of turning to witchcraft and then getting a stupid job at MTN. What he was supposed to do, instead of doing witchcraft and then ending up at MTN, only to be a snare up my nostrils because his witchcraft adoration then made him korobela me. He was supposed to say, naked I came into this world, naked shall I leave, God gave, now God took away. I came to Joburg, I enjoyed it during the season of time when I was a student. I was not able to get a job here. It's a hard knock life, it's rough in these design streets. I don't have a job yet, not even at the call center. I'll go home. He was not homeless. He had a car, put petrol in it, drive all the way to KwaZulu. Or if he did not want to tank up all that mileage, get on a Greyhound, go to KwaZulu. And go ahead, they will love you. And because in the rural areas when you arrive, everybody's ululating because you came back home, people will embrace you with ululations. And yes, you will wake up to you will wake up to mooing cows every morning and it'll just be dry and old and largely depressing. But I would know as a child of the living God ever since being thrown in this obscurity that when I feel forlorn and depressed because what is going on with my life conditions, I innovate so I don't have to be depressed throughout the day. Just basically gathering dust and wondering what's going to happen with me now. I innovate. And for years, this thing that I came up with, talking, sharing my testimony, sharing how in the world everything just really sucks, yeah, blah blah, all that jazz, okay, it became my source of comfort. And according to what the Lord is showing me, it's also a business. Even though I can't fathom how, I literally cannot. Yeah, the Lord has been showing me that this thing that I'm doing here is a business, and I can't even fathom how, because I don't know how I'm gonna make like just bountiful profits, like a whole chunk of money from all of these things that I'm doing. I literally cannot for the life of me explain to you how, but apparently it's a business. Apparently I'm starting something. Say something, I'm giving up on you. I'm sorry, every so often I break out into song. Yeah, apparently, allegedly, I am going to make money from this. I can't even fathom how because I've got so many resistances all up in my grill. But I'm telling this story of my ex-boyfriend and of me to help you understand, and also of Joseph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. To help you understand how the Lord operates and how the Lord tests faith, and how in that season of faith you literally do not get to come up with your own little cut corners. In that season you don't get to come up with your own chopped corners, and upon chopping corners they anticipate that God is just gonna ignore that you chopped corners while you profess his name. Do you understand? While you profess his name, because the Lord always does something. So if that ex-boyfriend of mine, I told you his story because it's true. It's a true story, and it also shows you what happens when you put the cart before the horse. When you don't want to wait on God, when you don't want to exploit long-suffering and patience. That ex of mine had no clue that even though when he was on the come up, the digital boom was yet to be a thing, it would become a thing, and he would inevitably become really wealthy wherever he found himself. Whether or not he was in Johannesburg, where he imagined this was the hub of industry, or in KwaZulu-Natal, because the internet has no borders, it has no boundaries. The internet does not dictate to you that you have to be in New York as opposed to rural Arkansas to really kill it as a graphic designer. Because now there's so many opportunities. During the time when I was looking to work, when I was trying to find anything to make money online, I found so many recommendations coming from YouTube advisors online that spoke about, graphic designing and how it is that so many companies wanted Fiverr, putting your profile there, being paid in dollars to do graphics for people that are not even in your country, insofar as you can provide them a portfolio, which that guy would have had quite a heavy one by the time Fiverr was a thing. And then they then rocked up platforms like Canva, which made it that much easier for graphic designers to do their work. And also Canva gave Lay Janes and Lay Joes graphic designing tools at their fingertips. This guy essentially put the cart before the horse. If he had waited a few more years, he would have been wealthier than whatever it is that MTN ever gave him. Instead, he became a little spiteful charlatan into dark arts, black magic, wreaking havoc in a woman's life, wanting her by force, because that's what he does. That's what he did. He just took anything that he wanted. This guy was extremely industrious. He not only was a graphic designer, but he also wanted to start any other kinds of random businesses, like pizza shops and whatnot, that would be run by other people, and him run them from the back end. So essentially, he had a business mind. With that kind of mind, and with godly resolve, I don't even know what today he would be. I don't know what today he is, but whatever he is today is a fraction of what he would have been if he had waited on the Lord. I don't know what he eventually became, but what he is now is a fraction of what he would have become. And what he is now is something that is going to inevitably endure a most heinous, a most severe, a most devastating, and a most excruciating regret because of what is going to happen to my life. A couple of years down the line, from all of his witchcraft and all of his insanity against my person, he then reared his ugly head again and essentially mocked me in a dream, trying to have sex with me, just as they hit it and quit it, mocking me, saying, if you had stayed with me, I would have married you. Now I just want to have sex with you. So God was showing me that ever since then, he not only continues to take whatever he wants with witchcraft, but now he doesn't even have conviction of all the things that I convict people of when they come to me. Sexual sin, he no longer has conviction of righteousness. He just thinks that he's saved, and he is really arrogant enough for him to say, now all I want to do is hit that. But back then, if you had stayed with me, I would have married you. I got a dream of him laughing at me that way because I was still in persecution. I was still striving. I was still suffering. He was always arrogant. And he also had it in him to use witchcraft vengefully. The way that he spoke about his ex-girlfriend, I concluded that he must have done something to her as well, because he prided himself in her ending up with some dude that apparently was not in his league, but as great as him. Like, dude, you come to Jesus, and then after coming to Jesus like that, you then bewitch girlfriend, you then get a job through witchcraft, you then threaten people with it when they basically hurt you in some way or that they don't agree with you. You're just like a full-on pagan, however, with a profession of faith on your tongue, because you're a hyper-Calvinist. You believe that you can't lose your salvation, and that is true, but you see, you've never been saved. And so because of your hyper-Calvinism, you not only are not representing Christ, walking in him, but you are of the imagination that you can take grace for granted, because you're going to go to heaven no matter what. His Twitter title, his Twitter bio, in it he wrote, saved from hell. No, he's not saved from hell. He's still very much headed there. I don't know if he can be born again or if he's blasphemed the Holy Spirit or whatever, but that dude was just like a typical example of what happens when people join cults. So he didn't join a cult, he didn't become a member of the Illuminati or whatever, he wasn't a member of a secret society or nothing so heinous and nefarious as that, but he was certainly practicing within his own capacity. He could have gone back to KwaZulu-Natal and chilled in his bedroom, tried to make ends meet. He used to love going back home as well, so it's not like he was going back to a place he didn't like, it's just that he did not want to stay there. And I think one of the reasons why he didn't want to stay was because clout, right? His community was like, oh, and but now when he was permanized there, he would just look like one of the locals, and so nobody would Jewishize themselves with him anymore. He used to love going home because he was loved. So he had a perfectly comfortable bed at home. He could have gotten a job eventually in Johannesburg by applying from a distance, calling his contacts. God might have done something for him, seeing as he wanted so desperately to be in Joburg. But what I'm getting at is that if he had held on to God, the digital boom that ultimately came, that would ultimately be giving graphic designers some of the most cushy, most comfortable jobs in the world, that would cause that much demand for their craft, where before it was like 1 out of 20 graduates get a job within the first year. Now he would have basically been in so much demand that there would not be enough graduates coming out of university, coming out of anywhere really, with like handsome looking portfolios that companies could go through. The number of digital firms that popped up everywhere everywhere that needed graphic designers, was just out of the roof astronomical. And listen, by the time that I lost my job at MTN, this was already a ramping up, but like I said, ever since COVID-19, 2019, it's even gotten worse because a lot of people went online. But just in terms of social media creativity, that's been even way before COVID-19. This dude in Jeffela from around the 2000 teens, which is not very far from late 2000s. When the 2000 teens entered, it was already the boom. It was already happening. He essentially put the cart before the horse and juiced an industry that would inevitably have fed him even if he hadn't sinned. But now he's got all that rap sheet on him, and he is at enmity with God, far from him, and is actively spitefully sneering and jeering at his suffering saints. His ex-girlfriend that dumped him because he was obviously a dark little one. The story of our dating is another one for another day. I've already explained it at length, but we broke up because he was just rude. He was spectacularly arrogant. Like I said, I don't believe that guy's belief in one's own talents was a delusion of grandeur. He definitely was actually talented, but he didn't have the humility that comes with Jesus Christ to actually steward all that in the Lord. So he was like, I'm gonna get mine, God, because you don't know who I am. You don't know who I am. You don't know what I can do. And he went on right ahead and showed God what he can do. He showed God because God was not quite bringing through for him what he wanted, so he showed God. And now he's looking at my God he's now looking at my God that I'm patiently waiting on. Like he wasted my life. Only because what? He's looking at the fact that we dated when you were 28 and I was 31. I would have married you. You're 41, you still don't have children. You're 41, you still don't have a career, you lost everything. Listen, I was onto something clearly by doing what I had to do, because God is not the only way. He concluded that God is not the only way, because when you use witchcraft, you end up believing that Christ is not the only way, especially considering you gaze upon the long suffering of saints, and then when they're still going through hell on earth a good 10 years down the line from the first time you made an observation of them, you then make a crazy little conclusion that there must obviously not be a God, except Joseph lost a decade. Not a decade, it was more than a decade. Because he was, I believe, still a teenage boy when he was sold into slavery. He became the prime minister of Egypt at the age of 30, because that's when he married the woman that was given him by Pharaoh. So basically maybe 12, 13 years in total before he became the prime minister of Egypt. And all of his 20s were eaten by Pac-Man, the locust, the palmerworm, the cankerworm. But that which Pac-Man be doing is God's plan. It is the very thing that the Lord was doing all along. So when you gaze upon sorrow, suffering, and also a decade of life, that you imagine by the time I'm this age I must be married, or I must have made my first million, or I must be working some kind of decent job and frankly en route proposing marriage to a very beautiful woman, or bearing my first ever child. Your plans and what you imagine are milestones that cannot be missed in a certain decade of life is what made a lot of these people sign contracts over to the devil. I lost all of my 30s and now I'm 41. So all of my 30s and nibbling into even my 40s. Joseph, the rest of his teens, and all his 20s. People just aren't prepared because of this myopic way of looking at the world. They're not prepared to lose an entire decade of their lives. And so in a jiffy, in a rush, they thoroughly out here be massacring the living dead out of their relationship and their prospects for a relationship with Jesus Christ in favor of man's opinions and also man's perspective, man's way of looking at 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, and I could go on. We all know that the KFC Colonel man, that's why his photograph on those KFC adverts is of this old white man. When he started chicken licking, he was in his 50s. He was already an old dude, so his photograph is of an old dude, and it is still today on all of the KFC branding. You don't know when God is going to start your journey, but if you listen to the story, if you listen to like American industrial history, if you listen to the story of how he even ended up with KFC chicken in his 40s, and in his 30s, he just kept starting restaurants that like rose and fell. He made chicken one time when like drivers would drive through a town. They used to love this chicken and they would buy it, but something happened and the business fell apart. It used to do well, but then it stopped doing well. Essentially, he was trial and erroring for 2 decades, until finally the franchise that we know today, that is global, that is KFC, became a thing. He died a very wealthy man, and it's still, his legacy is like echoing through history. Still, I mean, who does not love KFC? Who? I mean, I'm feeling it, right? Yeah, still to this day. I don't know if the man was in Christ or what, but what's important to understand is that you don't know what the Lord is doing with hits and misses, with trials and errors. And you also must not listen at or allow yourself to sign a contract with a nefarious body that is going to utilize your skills and your talents that you genuinely have for their agenda, that they might megalomaniacally control you. What in the world? These content creators that have signed deals with these Illuminati nonsenses, they're eloquent, they are talented at what they do, their personalities are so catchy, they're great speakers, they're easy to love and to follow, they're quirky, they're eccentric. Essentially, they have all the makings of he who or she who we would easily listen to. And then the ones that kill me the most are the musicians. The ones that murder me the most are the musicians. Why? Because it's not like Beyonce can't sing. It's not like Rihanna can't sing. It's not like, who is this chick that I sold myself to the devil that used to be a Christian? It's not like she can't sing. Taylor Swift. It's not like Billie Eilish can't sing. It's not Taylor Swift, but Taylor Swift too. But who's that chick? Hey man, the one whose parents were evangelical with the one eye that she has to adjust on stage now, right? You get my point. You know who I'm talking about. It's not like she can't sing. These artists that sign there, so like that, frankly, they sing, right? And then next thing they be rocking up on magazine covers with their eyes covered with their images covered with one eye. And they cover one eye, and then they rock up and they do imagery like this everywhere. It's like, okay, clearly you belong to something, obviously, girl. Ma, Mutwate actual poet, Mutwate actual lyricist, Mutwate actual beast when it comes to vocals, Mutwate excellent actress, but like, what's with this? And what's with this? And what? It's like, and weird little funny handshakes that are doing, all these symbolisms of theirs. And it's like, that's the thing, right? That's just the thing. It's not like the devil gives you prosperity and clout in spite of how whack you are. It's not like Sam Smith can't sing. I know I'm not the only one. Call me crazy. That's like it. I fell in love with Sam Smith as soon as he was out in the market. It's not like he can't sing. They know they can sing. They know they can dance. They know they can act. They know they can speak. They know they can bake. They know they can cook. They know they can whatever is your thing that you're doing. They know that they're a comedic genius. This guy's funny. He's just hilarious. They go and they grab God's gifts and God's talents in you, and then they control them and your narrative and make out of you a puppet out just speaking smack in the world, converting you to crazy things you ain't never been, making you forget about God's plan for family, making you forget about God's plan for a society, making you comprehensively neglect righteousness and morality, your early ways, your grandmother's upbringing, your faith. Now you hate Christians. Now you're at odds. Now all this other extra really gnarly weird stuff that the LGBTQIA++ community is doing, you're running with it even though it's really weird and it's really crazy. You're coming for your children. Like some of the most extreme people in these communities. Now you are trying to act as if though you're content with it. When you remember, I can think of better days when the world wasn't so crazy. It's not like the journalists cannot research, and it's not like they don't have the gift of the gab or the power of oratory like Pancake. It's not like the journalists cannot actually fact check or hook up a pretty great investigative journalism like story. It's that now they're being told you gotta hate Israel, be pro-Palestinian, and get paid a hefty 50 million rand per annum to do this thing. So it becomes about the check and not so much about the journalistic integrity. It's not like they can't do their jobs. It's that there is a controlled narrative around how they do their job. And at some point, remember I said, the wicked are like the tossing sea, whose waters bring up mire and dirt continually. There is no rest, that saith the Lord, for the wicked. And those that are Christian or Christian professing, like my ex-boyfriend, you're still saying that you're born again, you're still saying that you're not going to hell, and you're still walking up speaking all different kinds of Christian stuff on your lips. But you are tied to a cult that now you see what happens to those that reject their propositions. Sarabo becomes them. So now you are a participant, a mutineer against the body of Christ. You are contributing to the massacre of Christians in Sudan. You are contributing to the massacre of Christians in Nigeria, because it is the mainstream media that is controlling global narratives, that refuses to even cover these stories. And so Christians across the world do not appropriately respond to the pain in Nigeria. They don't appropriately respond to the pain in Sudan and Mozambique, everywhere. They don't appropriately react, and they don't see the true girth of sorrow in these spaces. They refuse to create activists out of young women like Greta Thunberg for the right cause, because Greta is a Gen Z that grew up being fed dung and junk. She loathes methane emissions, just as Bill Gates says is a thing, and also carbon emissions. And she started a whole big fat chunky thing out to doing speeches of the United Nations, speaking about how it is that I'm a Gen Z and I'm not going to have a planet to live on in the future, when she was just a little girl. Now she is a woman and I don't know how old she is, like 19, 20, she's very young, but Greta is a young woman now, and she has been influenced, just as she was influenced over the climate change agenda for the pro-Palestinian cause. And now she got like a whole flotilla out here roaming around in the Israeli seas and in the oceans. Gaza, she's out here all up in that joint, risking the living daylights out of her life because a narrative has been fed to her, and she's from youth quite activistic, quite involved. She gets her hands dirty. Ever since she was a child, she has not been just a mere kid. She is one of those gifted children. You know what I'm saying? That are like prodigies, if you will, that are beyond their years in comparison to other children. So essentially a gift to society. And so if you train a child like that in the way that she should go, she would have been an activist for the right cause. If Greta, I believe where is she from? Switzerland or what? Is it Switzerland or Sweden? One of them countries, right? But Greta Thunberg, having been raised up in a nation that I believe is largely Christian, but of course, apostate, you understand what I'm saying? Was trained in narrative, wanted to be popular on a global scale because she's always been a thought leader, because she's always been a bit of an ambassador for whatever cause, because she would never ever just keep quiet, because she always just wanted to be in the, like, one of those kids that are always in the front of the class trying to speak. They put her in the wrong, absolutely wrong platform. But can you imagine if Greta was properly trained? Train a child in the way that they should go, and when they're older they won't depart from it. Greta would have been a pro-Israeli activist. Greta would have been a Christian convert. Greta would have I ain't so busy, sister girl. Nama flotilla, all up in Gaza and stuff. She's busy with I mean, the girl is so headstrong that when Israel wanted to deport her, she refused to be deported because she was taking a stand activistically, and so they had to like sort of kind of they had to throw her in an Israeli prison, and then she ought to be speaking about how it is that, oh, they did this to me in the Israeli prison, even though really the Israeli people on that flotilla and offered her a sandwich. But she's headstrong enough, what I'm getting at, to essentially be thrown into prison for her beliefs and stand her ground. She has it in her. She has it in her to do that. Meaning that if Greta was trained the right way, she would have stood for Jesus in spite of being imprisoned, and she would have risked her life to basically enable the cause, seeing as them and their flotilla risking their lives at the oceans over there. She would have risked her life to basically shine understanding and light to what's going on in Sudan, to what's going on in Mozambique. She would have gone there. Like, listen, the girl would have gone there if that was her belief. Greta, just in the same way that she tried to go with her flotilla into Gaza, and so risk Hamas ripping the living daylights out of her head, she would have risked going into very dangerous territories of Nigeria just to let you know that this is what's going on in Nigeria. She has it in her, but it's all mangled and put in the wrong place. And so now she's anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, and floating around in the wrong oceans. She should be floating around, if she wants to risk her life all that much, Miss Thunberg, in Nigeria. That's the true source of pain for all of our communities. That's the true climate change. Oh, Greta Thunberg. The true climate change is the change of people's hearts towards God. And so us receiving all this nonsense in our stride as ordinary, normal, acceptable, when it is absolutely not. It is your very United Nations best friends trying to control all of us and our narratives and what we say on rooftops until our worlds look nothing like what it is that we grew up in. You're a Gen Z, Greta, right? You're a Gen Z, Greta, right? But so you would not remember a time. Maybe you might. I don't know, because times change really rapidly. But you would not remember a time when it was like super simpler and so nice to be in the streets with kids riding bicycles and everybody being super innocent and everybody going to church on Sunday being dragged by their parents. And there being largely a grandiose of morality in society and people loving family, virtue, house and home. Like people just adoring good old fashioned friendships, relationships, love, hanging out at malls and just like roaming these malls without being rude, respect of parents, obedience, all that jazz. You would, like if you were a millennial, you would know, or rather, if you were to go in a time's pod as a Gen Z into the youth of millennials and stay there for like a year, you would feel so grubby when you return to 2025, and you would hate the chaos of 2025 because of just how much society has absolutely plunged from moral decency and how it is so bizarre that children are even being made to transition their genders without parents' consent. You would long for the days where parents disciplined their own children without facing legal action because it raised up far more well-rounded kids. The Gen Zs are growing up in a weird little ecosystem. It's weird. It's like a twilight zone, and it's really evil. There are a lot of them, of course, that see that for what it is. But you see, those who can influence them aright have been massacred. They keep getting, you know how they killed Charlie Kirk, who actually is leading Gen Zs, right? To have proper values, to look at life the way that they ought to look at life. Charlie Kirk would have reached a Greta Thunberg if at all he was a Swiss man. Is she from Switzerland? One of them countries. If at all he was a Swedish/Swiss man. Proper, I'm sorry, It's like confusing Angola and Algeria. It's like they're all in Africa. I'm sorry, I'm so ignorant, but I know the difference between Angola and Algeria, not Switzerland and Sweden. I'm so sorry. Sorry. What did I do wrong? They're in Europe. What did I do wrong? They're the same. I'm sorry. The one where there is that lethal injection called the Hadron Collider. That's Switzerland, right? I think that's where Greta's from. Maybe it's because there's a Hadron Collider over there, a big giant Ouija board. That's why she's got a flotilla going to Gaza. What did I do wrong? I'm sorry. I hate ignorance because people get offended by it sometimes, but I don't have time to be searching stuff. I know she's from one of those countries, so forgive me, girl. I was just singing Mary Jane's song to you. I'm going down. Because I don't know if you're from Switzerland or Sweden, but I know that you belong to the Hadron Collider. Anyway, whatever. Greta Thunberg, the Hadron Collider lady. If Charlie Kirk was from either Switzerland or Sweden, he could have gone to Greta. But you see, there's just all these crazy narratives, and these narratives are destroying countries, and they're making us as global citizens focus on literally all the wrong things. They're focusing on the wrong things that are going to lead the world to the end of itself, to a dystopian nightmare, as opposed to recovery to what makes sense. And if at all we don't recover to what makes sense, listen, what in the world is going on in these uneasy streets? All that is going to happen is that there's not going to be enough Christians on the ground, true saints, holding the line strongly enough for the enemy to not break our lines, because we're too beleaguered. And if we get too beleaguered, either the world ends or it just becomes a dystopian era like the Dark Ages, where there's not enough Christianity, but it's not yet time for the end of the world. And so, I mean, do you want volume 2.0 of the Dark Ages that ultimately bring on board crazy pestilences like the bubonic death, the bubonic plague, the Black Death, because God is just judging a global citizenship for being so unrighteous? Are you in these streets thoroughly prepared for a second Black Death, y'all? Or a second Dark Ages? Because it was not yet time for the second coming in the Dark Ages, but it was that dystopian, that immoral, enough for, I guess, the Lord to plague them all with pestilence. Ultimately, there was a Protestant Reformation. There was recovery to God. Europe was energized. Europe was just given God back. There was a season, and that's what was called the Dark Ages, when it was literally just dingy. It's not yet time, guys, for the rapture. I am certain of it. I don't even believe anymore in the imminency of the rapture, not as much anyway. But I am sensing a bit of a Dark Ages, a bubonic plague. In my country, I'm sensing Rwandan genocide. You know what happened there? Over 3 months, how the Tutsis out here absolutely the Houthis out here massacred the Tutsis. Some of them were family members, they didn't care. They just genocided them over 3 months. That genocide, it reminds me of what's going on in South Africa, like a tribal cleansing. What's going on in Sudan? Tribal cleansing. Yeah. The Rwandan genocide happened in the 90s. The excruciating rape of those women in Bosnia, in that war, Bosnia/Herzegovina, 90s too. Looked like the end of the world. Holocaust. Was it the 40s? Looked like a monstrous, never-ending cycle of nasty. That was the end of the world. Every time you ignore Christian Judeo values, there is either a Rwandan genocide, a war in Bosnia, a Holocaust, apartheid South Africa, slavery, something that is so oppressive that it gives Dark Ages. It is essentially the extraction of godliness, the light. When you switch off we are the salt and the light of the earth. When you wholesale massacre Christians, that which stands in the gap for you and your entire country dies, goes to heaven, and then the Lord hands a nation over to the Dark Ages, to the Rwandan genocide, to apartheid South Africa. The Lord hands an entire country over to the Holocaust. The Lord will hand you over to wokeism. But the world is not over, guys. I just know it. I just know that I know that I know. I just know that I know that I know that it's not over yet, because it cannot be the end yet. For reasons I'm going to highlight towards the end of this message, and I'm not far from that place. I just know that I know that I know that we have some time left here. I just know. And so if at all we have time left and you're insisting on this trajectory, honeys and bumblebees, hello bubonic plague, hello Black Death, hello apartheid South Africa, hello genocide, hello Islamist jihad, hello Rwandan genocide, hello tribalist murders, hello butcherings, hello global citizenship, completely ignoring the plight of saints because there aren't enough true Christians on the ground. and mainstream media, which is being held together by the sticky tape of these cults, these secret societies that have tried to rise and they've fallen every single time in history, starting with the Tower of Babel. These cults ultimately fell because, listen, the wicked are like the tossing sea, whose waters bring up mire and dirt continually. There is no rest, saith the Lord, for the wicked. And because the wicked are like the tossing sea, they cause everybody else to wrestle in their bed, jostle in their beds. Look at the wicked in Sudan, they're just killing people. Look at the wicked in Tanzania, they're just killing people. Look at the wicked Muslim La Papa. Look at in South Africa what the wicked are doing, they're killing me. So essentially, when wicked men and wicked women rule, nothing but death follows. That's what the Bible says. When a wicked man rules the streets, people rejoice. But when an ominous one does so, they mourn. Yes, of course, I'm paraphrasing. People cannot stand under an unrighteous leadership structure. Why? Because of the fact that wicked men can't rest, and because of their lack of rest, they cause everybody else restlessness. And human beings, God made the Sabbath for man, not man for the Sabbath. And God is the God of the Sabbath, so he don't need no chill pill. Only we do. People cannot stay in a constant state of war. They cannot, otherwise it will be exasperated entirely. And given that inherently God has built in us self-preservation, there comes a time when war fatigue becomes an issue. Everybody gets exhausted from just fighting. But who eventually wins? It is those who are restored and recovered to sobriety, to see that our societies fell apart because we embraced wholesome trash. Yeah, because trash can be wholesome. The wicked prosper to make that a thing. Look at how they be talking about conversion therapy as problematic, and yet they are out here willing to make little boys girls and girls boys. It's wholesome trash because I think it's wholesome to embrace your gender, but it's trash according to those who are in right standing. So seeing as we're at odds, seeing as we're clanking swords, we're at loggerheads, we're headbutting. Since we're all headbutting, who do you think is going to ultimately win? When the wicked are embracing wholesome trash, this is the truth. The scepter of the wicked shall not remain on the land allotted to the righteous, lest the righteous should turn aside their hands to do evil. Psalm 125. What I'm trying to get at, you guys, it's like 5:34 in the morning, so I'm really quite exhausted and I'm hungry. What I'm trying to get at, individual persons in the streets of earth, is that war fatigue, even though people are fatigued, will make whoever is willing to fight for restoration of peace, fight for it in a state of fatigue. And seeing as it will ultimately be clear, evidenced, that there is no peace in those who are trying to control, because people don't want to be controlled, not while the restrainer is still on earth, giving mankind free will. It'll be those who realize that the only reason we got taken over by Islam in our countries, the only listen, an Islamist takeover is not even altogether that prophesied in the scriptures. So it means that the world an Islamist takeover, just like the United States of America, is not in Bible prophecy. Listen, Ishmael, this is his pronouncement, his prophecy from God. When his mother Hagar was in the wilderness out here thinking her son is gonna die. No, not her son, sorry, when she was pregnant having run from Sarah the first time. God said to Hagar, you are gonna bear a son and you will name him Ishmael. And this Ishmael individual is going to be a great man, he's going to be a great nation, and he's going to be a wild man. And every man will be against him, and he will be against every man. He's just a guy of war. He's a guy of tumult. He's a guy of striving. But the Bible says that the wicked are like the tossing sea, whose waters bring up mire and dirt continually. There is no rest, saith the Lord, for the wicked. Ishmael is a restless man because of his wild nature. He has no temperance within himself. So being against every man and every man being against himself, he will by conquest try to conquer, but he will not win, because God has made the Sabbath for man, and man will always long after the Sabbath. And since Ishmael is a man without Sabbath, because he's a wild man, a donkey, he will be conquered. Islam is not the be-all and end-all of a main issue. Even in the tribulation, the world is largely irreligious and apostate, just kind of fluffy. They're not Muslims. They're pagans that are wild like ox, like donkeys, just like Sodom. No religion. Every man does what is right in his own eyes. The last days that is written in God's word are going to be like the days of Noah, where the thoughts and intentions of mankind are evil continually. There's going to be violence on the earth, all over the streets. People are going to be doing whatever they want. And in Sodom, there was lots and lots of sex, lots and lots of homosexuality, lots and lots of indulgence food, lots and lots of this and that, but barely any religion, barely any idol worship, any idols, just man-centered hedonism, pleasure-seeking, just a morass of eat, drink, sleep, fornicate, defecate. That was Sodom. The world is going to look like that, and I am not proper. I don't even, listen, maybe the rapture will happen in my lifetime because of the way that things are going on such a downward trajectory. I imagine it could happen in my lifetime, but it might not. But when it does, if it happens in my lifetime and I'm like nice and old and ripe, right, yo, I can't even fathom what level of wickedness is going to be going on over there, given what level of wickedness is going on over here. Listen, I can't fathom it and I can't see it. But one thing that is certain is that Ishmael might be a wild donkey, but because of the fact that he is so unrested, he is not going to be embraced ubiquitously, because nobody, you see everybody's qualms with Illuminati leadership and the World Economic Forum trying to make people have nothing and be happy and trying to take food away from meat away from people. Bill Gates now wants to vaccinate cows so as to reduce their carbon, their methane emissions, whatever, like just weird stuff, right? I've just been watching all these things on YouTube. So he's changing his mind. You can eat meat insofar as it's from me. That's Bill Gates, right? Yeah, they're changing their mind. Their narrative is forever just vacillating, and because it's vacillating, people are just going to stop having trust for whatever it is that they're saying. So even Greta Thunberg might even have angst about, listen, I stood for climate change for a minute, and now you don't even think it's a thing, Bill Gates. Bill Gates was actually trying to say what's with the carbon emissions or the methane emissions, and now you're changing your mind. You're saying we can eat cows insofar as you vaccinate them. It's going to cause angst in a person that's been like, listen, I became a protagonist for your movement. What is happening? People will hold on to a truth insofar as that truth is absolute and insofar as it is consistent. But if it is clearly proven a fallacy later on, they're going to have angst and they need to not believe in something else. Because people must believe in something. We are made for purpose. That's who we is. That's who we are. And if at all, the thing that we held fast to in purpose is just wobbly legged and shaky, if at all you're a very purposeful being that is self-preserving, you will find another ideology to trust in. And so Hamas is Islam. I say Hamas because they were the ones all up in everybody's hair like ticks recently because of what they did at the kibbutz and the music festival. But just Islam, okay? Yeah. They are so violent and they have such little rest and they're so evidently evil. You will remember how Hamas went and butchered their own people after doing assassinations in Gaza after Israeli hostages were released. And they refused to disarm. So too does Hezbollah refuse to disarm. Listen, there is just like a cow, not a cow, but a donkey in Islam that is just so restless that given that God made the Sabbath for man, man is not going to be able to take Islam in his stride. It's too restless. It's a wild animal. It is Ishmael. Every man is going to be against you, and you against every man. The world is going to be against Islam, and Islam is going to be against the world. They are not going to conquer. Isaac is the one that takes the world over, not Ishmael. And Ishmael loses the world because he is a wild donkey, and he will by any means necessary establish his Muslim caliphate in the world. But where Islam goes, there is death. And even Greta's going to find that out eventually. She's going to see it for herself. Greta's going to wake up one day and smell the proverbial coffee and realize that, listen, no thank you. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and we want to eradicate it when Hamas is busy just butchering its own Gazans after a ceasefire and they want down tools. And even the hostage deals, Papa, you be out releasing 1,000 Palestinians in exchange for 20 Israelis. There is clearly a diplomatic heart on one side, just like the skewed evidence of the death of Sudanese people under the clutch of all of those militant groups. And it is evident that these people are men, women, and children who are non-violent and clearly Christian in Nigeria, not Sudan, Nigeria. And yet the Nigerian government is out just saying, listen, this is just criminality, tribes on tribes violence. It has nothing to do with any religious affiliation, except it is clear that people in a grave, you know that very heartbreaking video at a funeral of Nigerians in a grave where they don't even have coffins because there's literally no money. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that pastor is like, United Nations, America, please help us. This is what they're killing. These people are all Christian. There is not a single person in this grave that is not Christian. Help us along. The evidence is clear that Christians are the ones that are being wholesale massacred. But the Nigerian government is in denial. Well, I mean, nobody here is dumb enough to sit with that narrative. People have got biases. People have biases. You hold on to your bias. You latch onto it for dear life. You just won't let it go. It's tight on your body like a brassiere, or it's tight on your body like a corset. You can't breathe, but you can tell that something is really tight. And unless you remove that, you're going to get some varicose veins, girl. You're going to have trouble breathing. You might even break one of your ribs. Papa, you're in danger if you don't take off that corset. Eventually people, because man is made, God made the Sabbath for man. They're going to want to breathe. They're going to want to take off the brassiere and let them hang. They're going to want to take off the corset and breathe. And Islam is a freaking corset. It's a very tight bra that gives you a double boot. It's full of tumult, full of striving, and God knew that the human race is weak, fallible, and so therefore needs at least 1 day of rest. And according to the Lord's word, Ishmael, which is where the root of Islam is at, that's where they even trace their own roots. His own prophecy, God said, I'm going to make you a big, strong nation. I'm going to make you a many people, and you're going to be a wild dude. And every man is going to be against you, and you're going to be against every man. Because you lack peace, the world is going to be against Ishmael. Islam is not going to be a predominant force or a predominant influence, it can't be. Towards the rapture, at the very end, it can't be. Because every man will be so against Ishmael that, listen, they're gonna get over him. Even Muslims are gonna get over Ishmael. Why? Because Muslims are human. They're gonna get tired of the war, the lack of love in their religion. It's too wild. They just keep killing people in synagogues. They break, they put babies in. Listen, they are so violent, and they are also bold in their violence to show the world their violence in a way that many other people who are violent, who are killing, don't quite record it. Islam kills people in ditches and shallow graves, and they record it they record it and then they post it on social media. You will celebrate Ishmael, right? You will celebrate and celebrate and celebrate the death of people, but eventually even some of your most staunchest advocates are going to walk away from you, because man is not intended to strive indefinitely, and Islam is full of striving. Remember I said that Qatar, well, that too, but Iran and the UAE are both funding the crazy militias in Sudan. But their intention is, how do you eat an elephant one piece at a time, right? They want to establish Islam in there, and then once they've established Islam, they want their version of Islam. So essentially, even once they've Islamified the whole country, they're still going to go fighting together. So as to make their version of Islam catch. Well, I'll tell you a little something about Christianity. There's only one way, one truth, one life, and we all come to the Father through Jesus Christ. And killing people off because they are basically of different denominations within Christ is not a thing. Your religion is so violent that the world is going to get fatigued from war. But you see, the world has to first endure like a black death, like a bubonic plague, like just the dark ages, before it realizes that we can't live like this. Where is the Son of Righteousness that comes with healing in his wings? Where is light? We're in the dark ages. Where are the lights? The light and the salt of the earth. Where are the Christians? You don't know what you got till it's gone. We are prayerful. We stand in the gap. We have spiritual weapons that actually work. Our enemies have to be below the belt. They have to make us partake in sexual immorality, eat food sacrificed to idols. But otherwise, we've actually got power. Islam is forceful, it's pernicious, it's stealthy. And in countries where it goes in, it even goes into the supermarket chains, into wholesale, into foods, into the food industry, and makes all of our freaking food halal. Like, what has happened? Why? Why is almost like, why is so much food on our shelves halal in a Christian country? Like, that's how pernicious they are, that's how stealthy they are, and that's how forceful they are. In Christianity, when it comes to preparing food, according to the scriptures, there's not really much that we need to do insofar as our consciences are clear and we've prayed over the food, we're good. There is nothing that is unclean versus clean.